Hello and welcome everybody to the Sales and Marketing Director Incubator, the program that helps you make great career decisions to maximize your potential. My name is Mike Dixon, Director of the Sales, Marketing and Category Practice for AXR Recruitment and Search. Now, in each episode this year, we're focusing on a theme. In our last live session, we talked with Elise Berryman, the entrepreneur within. Elise is a founder and manager director of a company called Liquify, which is an entrepreneurial spin-off business from Pharmacare. If you missed it, it's now available for download in our podcast, Your Future in Sales and Marketing, along with, I think, 45 or so sessions we've now run. Today, we're live with Daniel Roberts, Sales and Marketing Director for Shine. Shine is a fast growth energy drinks business, which is taking on some of the biggest brands around, Red Bull, V and Mother, to name a few. So welcome, Daniel. How are you today?
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. I sit here as we're doing this in a lovely part of the world in Hamilton Island with some of our partners and retailers here. So it's a great place of the world to be dialing in from, but fantastic.
Brilliant. Yes, you're one part of the world, I'm the other. For those who aren't aware, an unfamiliar backdrop, I'm in a farm on the Welsh border in Herefordshire in England, and Dan's in Hamilton Island, and we've got our production team sitting in Sydney. So if the connection goes, for those of you on the live call, or if you're listening to the podcast down the line, my colleague Chris Hamill is primed and ready to jump in. So we won't miss a beat, but hopefully we'll be fine and technology will prevail. So we're going to explore a few things today with your career, Daniel. But I think one of the things that I'm most interested about to start with is the move from elite sports to commercial leadership, a transition you've made. I want to unpick that journey as we kind of go through your career towards your role in Shine. But let's kind of start and kick off with our usual first question, which is your favorite brand. And you can't name Shine, you can't name any of the brands you've worked on, but if you had to pick a favorite, what would it be?
Yeah, well, it's going to be hard because Shine is right up there. But I'd probably say one that comes to mind really, really quickly is Lululemon as a brand. And I think a brand for me, one that is amazing, is one that doesn't just have great products, which they definitely do, but so do many others. But a brand that has a DNA and culture that really speaks true to what their brand is and how they go about things. And, you know, I've read the book, Chip Wilson's book that started Lululemon, and the story behind that and the culture behind it. There's all those small things. And I think as you grow organizations, you work through organizations that are large or small, I think one of the hardest things you can do is keep a DNA of what was so special as a founder or early stage. And you see it through Lululemon's network, even down to store level, where they have really local orientated decisions to help their community and connect with their community. And for a brand that's quality is amazing, their R&D is amazing. So I'd definitely say Lululemon is not that I see myself too often in yoga pants, but they're a fantastic brand.
Well, I live in Lululemon stuff, Daniel, because my daughter works there. She's a student, but that's a student job, and like a lot of students who's had lots of jobs, but she loves it. You know, yeah. She's treated superbly well. She's hyper connected to the brand. She's an absolute advocate. And, you know, as a result, our whole family are bedecked in Lululemon clothing. You know, they do workwear as well. So I've got long pants for work. I play golf in Lululemon, I run in Lululemon. So I'm a big fan. So I'm with you, but they treat the staff brilliantly. Really, absolutely. They live and breathe it.
Yeah, it's super important.
Yeah, cool. Good choice. Next kind of question, just before we get into your career, what I'd love to ask as well is if you could lead any organization in the world, and let's again put Shine and Lululemon to one side, but which one would it be?
Yeah, and in thinking about this one, I'm very, very fortunate, I believe, in the role that I'm in. So firstly, let's put it on record that I do believe that I'm leading or supporting or working with some of the most amazing people in this business that will become a global organization. There's no doubt about it. And that's exactly where I'd want to be or how I want to be. So Shine as a business is incredibly amazing. So I just want to put it on record that would be Shine. As another organization, I think as I've grown up through my career, I think having an alignment to the business you work for either it be a passion if you're lucky enough to do that, or you're either passionate about doing it yourself or being a part of it. It's an interesting one. Ironman Corporation, which is quite an interesting business and evolved over many, many years, has many different avenues. But I think leading that organization would be incredibly interesting across their event space. I participate quite heavily in triathlon a few years ago, and now in most of the endurance and ultra marathons and stuff like that they put on. I think they've got such an amazing ability to touch and engage so many different people and so many different levels, from elite athletes all the way down to first-time marathoners or first-time Ironman events. So it's such an emotive experience of a business. So I think we could touch a lot of people and probably do it a little bit more naturally.
Yeah. Well, cool. And it kind of leads us into, I guess, the first part of today's conversation, Daniel, which is about your early careers, because you didn't go straight into sales and marketing. You didn't go straight into the classic, FMCG or consumer background, but you started in professional sport. So what did you do in sport, and for how long did you do it?
Yeah, I don't think much in my career has been overly conventional, in all honesty, but that's been a good thing. I think as a young boy, I'm a twin, so that was quite interesting growing up. And I've got a younger brother, and we started BMX riding since we were 3 or 4. So it sort of just started that way, and we sort of grew into it and did that for quite a few years, and then jumped into field hockey for quite a few years, and then started playing Australian rules football, which I learned a lot about rugby last night, actually, with everyone here. Taught me a lot about rugby, but AFL was what I played for quite a bit of time. And then that sort of built into a few other sports, and it kept going. So majority of my life has been either professional sport or trying to be into professional sport. I love it. There's a passion for it. I think it teaches you amazing things. Didn't know it back then. I suppose you reap some of those rewards now as you start to get a little bit older and understand how it fits into your life. But yeah, sport and exercise has been a massive part of my life.
Yeah, and mine too. Not never professional, but I try and do some sport activity every day. But on you, Daniel. So why did you leave sport? What was the kind of transition from sport into business?
Yeah, to help answer that, I suppose it gives some context as to what my goals were going through secondary school and high school. It was always either to play football professionally, which I don't think I was alone there. I think every guy that was my age had the same goal. And then if it wasn't that, it was join the police force. And it was those two things. I was pretty adamant that was the only thing I was going to do. So as I got a little bit older, I went to the police exams and did my entrance exams. I was on the waiting list for the academy straight out of school. I then got asked back to do a pre-season in the VFL with one of the feeder teams, and then a pre-season with Richmond. So I decided to go back and do that and put the police career on hold, and then never went back to that. The football career lasted another 2 to 3 years, and I needed to do something a little bit more with my life. And at that point in time, Coca-Cola were employing merchandisers. They were doing a big run for merchandisers, which is a lot of weekend work, building displays and working in the corporate grocery area. So I joined that because it fitted my lifestyle at the time, and then just started a career that has never ended. And I just found a massive passion for sales, for high-performing teams, and funny enough, I've just been in FMCG ever since, in different brands.
Right, and I'll talk about some of those companies you've worked in, but you've also run your own sports management business at DTR, I think is called. Yep. Tell me a bit about that business.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't something that was overly planned or organized. And I can't say that I sat there from a kid and had an entrepreneurial background and sold lemonade, and I don't have that background. But I was competing quite heavily in sport, and I could always see that there was an amazing amount of talent in a certain group of athletes that didn't come from backgrounds that had privilege and could pay their way through and get to the best schools and do the best things. I also had 2 friends of mine that I used to train with who were incredible athletes, still worked full time. One was a firefighter and one was a plumber. and they just didn't have that ability or the time or the energy, probably more so the energy as professional athletes, to do the corporate discussions and to do the pitches and do the sponsorship negotiations. So I just helped them out as some support, and then that went really well. Word of mouth, we brought on a few more athletes, and then 12 to 18 months later, there was 100 plus athletes across Australia, and 20% of those were internationally racing. And it sort of just built, and I absolutely loved it. I was doing that my time at Coca-Cola when I was a rep. Many times I'd be on a plane at the end of the day to another state, catch up with an athlete, do the negotiations with the supplier or the sponsor, and then fly back first thing in the morning and straight back into trade. I don't know how I did that now. I don't know if I have the same energy levels now for that, but training for Ironman at the same time, and it was kind of like, just how do you fit the most amount of things in at all one time? So that business is still ticking along. I do more of a consulting side of things now than it is the heavy lifting and hands-on around athletes, and the pandemic has obviously had a massive impact for that sector.
I love it. And did you specialize in working with athletes in particular types of sports, or is it all over the kind of spectrum?
It did narrow. It did narrow down, but like many businesses and many people, they go very, very wide and try many different things. So there was big wave surfers, there was amateur golfers, there was triathletes, track and field, track cycling. It was pretty much anyone that would listen at the time when I first started that wanted some support, and everyone does. They just don't like paying for it at times. So from a service-based business, you got to show what's best for them and how it helps them, and sign 2 or 3 sponsors and it pays back your retainer. And there's a little bit of work that's done around that, but it did narrow down, Mike, to being more track cycling, track and field, and triathlon, which unfortunately is not a great deal of money in those sports, but it's more passion.
Yeah. So it still goes today, which is fantastic. Now, I love what you said earlier around, you had this, the start of your career at Coke, you were training for Ironman, you're running this new sports business, which was going broad. It's a lot of stuff in your life. And when I look at sports people, those that I've known who are in the elite section, they are really strong commonly at goal setting, at organizing themselves, setting milestones, what to achieve. Is that something that, with that degree of busyness in your life, you've kind of taken into your commercial career?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that translates across. While you don't always recognize it, or it's that obvious to you when you're doing it or working through it, a lot of it can be quite innate. And goal setting is one of them, I suppose. When you think about football, for an example, you've got a season and everything's sort of planned out during that season. You want to peak at certain times. There's certain exercises you need to do and improve. It's always about improving and being better, because that's what you need to do as an athlete, and that's why you've got coaches and support teams. Also, I think the biggest thing coming out of that time, if I reflect back, and it's something I'm really happy that I did do, is through a lot of the development squads, actually, as a teenager, it was a really high pressure environment in regards to every year at the start of each year. It could have been just before Christmas, there'd be 75, 80 blokes that would turn up, or guys, they weren't blokes at that stage, guys that would get invited down to train, and then that would get whittled down. The first cut, it might go down to 50, and the next cut goes down to 40, and then they end up landing on their squad, which is about 34, 35 people. And there's guys from all walks of life, from private schools and public schools, from wealth, different religion, different backgrounds, whatever the case may be. And it actually taught you at a really young age how to relate and engage and build rapport with people extremely quickly under circumstances where more often than not, you actually don't want them to succeed, because if they're succeeding, you're getting cut. So it's an interesting concept, but I think building relationships with people and being comfortable with different people is one of the biggest things that came out of that, which is translated into the career of building rapport, whether it's with customers or your team or colleagues or board members, whatever the case may be. That's been something that's been quite comfortable for me. It's come quite comfortable from that time. And then obviously the planning and prioritization, you need to do that to fit everything in.
think a lot of people make the obvious analogy between sport and business around this whole concept of team, which you've talked to there, but you've also talked to the kind of competitive individual nature as well, which is something that probably doesn't come to mind initially. But if you think about it in career terms, particularly in corporate life, you are competing for the next level, for the next role, to be recognized. Yet often that level of performance can only be achieved with a team as well. So you've kind of got this really interesting balance of, I need me and my team to do well, but I need me to do really well. So that's a really interesting dichotomy almost to try and get your head around. I've not thought of it in terms like that until you describe your experience in sport. But and I wonder if others kind of think of it in those terms as well, or whether, because you get some people who are great team players and seem to do everything for the team, others who are lone wolves. And I think getting the balance right must be quite tough.
Yeah, I think everyone plays a role in different ways. So even in a team, you're going to have a band. A band might be a better example. You're always going to have a lead singer. You're always going to have a drummer, and you're always going to have a guitarist and a bass player, and they all play different roles. And one's a lead, one's behind, but together they make the band. And teams need that also. The old analogy, only as strong as your weakest link, is pretty true. And we see that, there's a lot of talk around the military around how strong it is around having trust and total awareness that the person beside you is going to support you and have your back at any time. Because obviously the military is extremely life and death. We're not in those scenarios most of the time, although sometimes people feel like they are. It's not life or death. And there's real strong synergies between sport and military and corporate life, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that pathway into Shine, because we're going to spend quite a bit of today talking about Shine, because I'm really interested in what you guys are doing, the level of ambition that you've displayed already, and in the conversations we've had up to this point, Daniel. But so your pathway, reasonably conventional. You worked at Coca-Cola, as you said. You worked at T2, which is part of the Unilever business, Lavazza. So if you look at that pathway in, was Shine or an entrepreneurial type business always where you wanted to be, or were you kind of quite happy in that corporate path and Shine happened to you?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I don't think it was by design, in all honesty, if I'm being honest. I caught up with at this conference I'm at the moment with someone I used to work with many years ago at Coca-Cola, and it was someone I had an immense amount of respect for. And we were sort of talking about our journey through that period of time and how things have changed with Coca-Cola Amatil turning into Coca-Cola Enterprises and the change of that bottling. And the way I explained it was I'm extremely grateful and very happy about the time that I spent at Coca-Cola, because the groundings are amazing. But I'm just as happy that I left when I did, because what it did do, I could have been very comfortable in that business. I enjoyed the people I worked with. I was always reasonably successful at what I did because of not wanting to settle and always wanting to be better. And you sort of stood out a little bit in those kind of corporations because of that fact. But it also made you realize that it's probably not always the right place for you. So leaving that business was probably a great thing to do for my career. It wasn't the most comfortable thing to do at all, because comfort at that age was probably something people look at more than putting themselves in very uncomfortable positions. And that taught me to just keep putting myself in uncomfortable positions, not silly positions, but chosen decisions that, how do I learn more? What kind of environments are going to teach me what I need to know? Who are the people that are really good at what they do, and spend time with them? It's like training with a lot of people. You train with professionals all the time. You're getting beaten quite badly all the time, but then you go back and train with some people that you've trained with before, and you're miles ahead of them. It's just pick the best people to be around. You feel very uncomfortable at that time, but you learn immense amounts. Moving into Shine, it wasn't a decision around, is this a startup or a scale up compared to a corporate business? What I really liked about Shine, I drank the product before joining the business. So that was the first thing. No offense to our friends and colleagues in the tobacco industry, but it's an industry that I could never passionately sell or be involved in, just for my own personal reasons. But this was a brand that I believed in first and foremost. I saw an amazing amount of respect for the founder and current CEO, Steve Chapman. Still do. He's the most amazing leader that I've worked with or for. So it was really about the culture and the different space of my career I was in, really, that landed at the right time, not really hunting for it, if that helps answer the question.
Yeah, it does. And I think one of the ideas behind this program is to understand pathways and how decisions and career moves happen. Some are very well planned and executed with goals set long time in advance. Sometimes it's about taking an opportunity, but you talked there a mindset of putting yourself into the more uncomfortable position. And I think it's very easy to kind of continue on a pathway, but sometimes taking a slight left or a right, or a big left or right, makes a big difference, because you look to contrasting experiences. Because if you're just racking up iterative experience after experience, and you're marginally getting better or improving, but if you're taking occasionally big steps, there's risk with that, but the upside is that you're layering on something very different onto your kind of skill set, experience base, and got your chance to really improve yourself. So I think that mindset you talked to is really important. Let's talk a bit about
too, Mike. Sometimes backwards step too can be the case also. It's and to answer your question a little bit deeper, I suppose what you're saying is, growing up through business is always, what is the next role? So I've been in my role for 12 months. I've got some great results. What's the next job? What's the next job? And those corporations train you to be in a role for 12 to 13 months, 14 months, and then you're on to the next position, you're on to the next position. So it was always chasing your remuneration grade or your title. And it was that. I'm not going to hide behind that. It was like that for quite a few years, actually. And it's what gave you the hunt to keep growing through those businesses. But somewhere along that journey, that changed from wanting a title and your remuneration to wanting to have impact, and wanted to recycle the work you're doing. So most good people can do something well in 12 months. But the better ones can do it again the next year. And the great ones can do it the year after, and have growth on top of growth on top of growth. So it sort of turned to that. And my career leaving CCA or Coca-Cola at the time was really about, what are those skills that I need to round off as moving towards a general manager or a CEO role. That's changed slightly now. However, the move to T2 was about export experience in international markets. And there was a reason why I joined that business, and it was a global wholesale business that was specifically looking at expansion. So I went for a role that gave me the expansion to Southeast Asia, the Middle East, the UK and US. Whereas this role is really coming in to build a high performance team and build a corporation for the founder.
I think that's really important, because you talked to the shift from seeking a role and another role to a business that's going to give you a different experience. And that is really important. The first thing we lead with any conversation with somebody who's talking to us as a recruiter, whether they are, should they stay in their own business? Should they leave? What role should they go for? And we throw it back and say, let's talk about the business experience you've had so far, and let's ensure that the next step you're going to get, if you're going to leave your business, is going to give you a business experience you haven't had. It's going to give you the opportunity to learn stuff you haven't done, and not just do a role that you haven't done, but go on a journey with a business that you haven't been on before. So I think that's really important. Let's talk a bit about Shine, and so start with the business first of all. For those who aren't familiar, I gave a very top line description earlier on, but give me the elevator pitch. What and who is Shine?
Yeah, the best way to explain this is the mission statement is to help people think, feel, and do better, and ultimately rid the world of bad energy, and bad energy being stuff that's not healthy for you or not natural. And there's a lot of that out there in the market at the moment. But we're doing that through what are known as nootropics, and nootropics are age-old ingredients that have been around for many, many years that support in awakening the mind. So ginkgo biloba, turmeric, L-theanine, B vitamins, green coffee beans, green tea, as well as a few other ingredients. And what it ultimately is supporting with is a very, very large part of the market in energy, which is the fastest growing category still in any beverage sector in Australia, New Zealand, all the world, because people are wanting the need states. The two biggest need states is hydration and energy. Coffee is one of the most, coffee and tea are the two highest consumed beverages in the world. Other way around, tea first and then coffee. And yeah, people are looking at getting more out of their days. The pandemic's changed that dramatically, around working from home and time being squeezed, but they want to do it in a healthier way. The generation of millennials coming through also want and have a very strong view on many, many different things around, is it sustainable? Are you responsible around the packaging? Is it ethically sourced? What are the ingredients? Is it natural? Is it low sugar? All these different areas. So Shine has a range of energy drinks, better energy drinks, from a shot in the 100 ml shot, which was the original product that the business was founded on, through to some great flavors in a sparkling range, 330, and we've just recently launched last year our 500 ml charged can, which is really touching on that zero sugar market out there with energy, and it's got some great ingredients in it that help the body deal with stress and adaptogens and the likes. And then we've got our 250 ml can version, which is getting some real traction in the market at the moment. So growing exceptionally fast as a business. We've got a great team around us and great people working for the business. Shine Nootropic energy drink is the best way.
Great. Okay. And for those who on the live call today, guys, I should have mentioned this right at the start, but there's a chat facility if you want to jump in and ask myself or Daniel a question, do that, and I'll do my best to get to them as we go. Now, and in terms of your roles, let's talk about your roles. What do you do for Shine, Daniel? Just give me, again, elevator pitch on your role.
Yeah, a lot in a scale-up business is definitely, you roll your sleeves up and be across a lot of different things. But ultimately, I see my role within this business and other organizations too, is the role is to unlock talent, to build capability with your teams, with the interest that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 in output. 1 + 1, the goal is to equal 3 or 4, and to get more out of people. The scale and output that I've seen from the Shine business since I've been in it, I've never seen it matched in any business I've been in. For the size of the business and the amount that gets done and the amount that gets focused on is incredibly amazing. So a big part of my role I see there too. Outside of the general, there's KPIs that sit behind every role within a business, and let's not shy away from the fact that I'm accountable and responsible for a P&L and for growing the top line sales and making sure it's profitable, and forecasting and business development and managing our customers. That's all wrapped in there. But I ultimately think these roles are a little bit more than that in regards to you dealing with people, and that's a massive part of business, and it's probably what makes people successful or not is their focus on that.
Yeah, and this is your first sales and marketing director role. So was there anything when you stepped into this role that surprised you? And what's kind of been what you expected, and you've been in it for a little while now, but for those who are perhaps haven't done a sales and marketing director role, they're thinking one day that's the sort of job I want to do. Give us the benefit of your experience.
I don't think much is surprised. Well, not much surprising me at all anymore. Mate, with everything that's gone over the last 2 years, never thought that half this stuff would have happened, and we've worked through some amazing and challenging times. So I definitely honor everyone that's out there that's gone through some challenging times and some tough times, but also some amazing growth times. It's been quite a challenging, but also an enlightening period of time. So I didn't find much to be quite changing or came out of the blue or whatever the case may be. One thing you do notice, or I have noticed in my career as I've gone through different roles, and none more so than this business, it's probably you're more exposed here than you are in some other businesses because of the size, and the decisions you make or don't make have material impacts, not only on the business's bottom line, but on the people that are working within the business. So if someone once said to me, I think it was my time at Coca-Cola, towards the end of the time I was there, I was still in this phase of trying to get every role that's higher than me and get to the next role and get to the next role. And someone once said to me, goes, Dan, until you've been in a role where if you sneeze, the business catches a cold, you won't truly understand what experience you need to go through to be ready for these roles. People can go and do them. There's a difference between doing them from an intellect perspective and being comfortable in the role and thriving in the role. And they're two very, very different things. It really hit home, that comment. I had another way of explaining it, but I won't say it on here. There's many different ways to explain that catch a cold scenario, but it's 100% true. It's not lonely at the top, like some people say. It's not that it's lonely. Actually, there's no top. If you took the concept of hierarchy out, and it was just you're there at service for the people you're working with, and you support to unlock their potential and their capability. That's where true scale and growth comes from. It's not about me. It's not about the director of the role or about the role. It's also not about knowing all the answers either. I think we'd be in a world of trouble if Shine expected me to have the answers, or Steve expected me to have the answers to everything in this role, because that's also probably a bit of a myth that people may perceive, is that people in these roles have every single answer for every single problem that's coming up. You just got to be better at resourcing and being quite resourcefulness around where you get those answers, or how you unlock them, and the balance between leadership and management.
Yeah, I meet a lot of people who are either in a role like yours, Dan, or they're making the first step to that sort of role. And to me, the defining difference when I feel someone's ready, or they're ready for the role, or they're comfortable even for a next step up, is when they start to talk about the business more holistically. They're less focused on just their job, their number, their lane. But when I ask them a question, they give me a perspective of it starts at an enterprise level, organizational level, and then they layer it down to what they're actually responsible for. And I think that's the big difference between managing your role and then start to lead a business or lead a function. So I think you describe it quite well, and I see it very patently when I meet people that's a big defining factor for me. Also interesting, because you talk about the ambition you got for Shine. You this is a still in the kind of fast growth phase, but you're very bold and unashamedly talking about the fact you guys have got a lot of ambition for what you want to achieve, which I think is fantastic. Now, you compete in a category of some big brands. There's the Red Bulls and V's and Mothers and all the rest of this world, and many more. How do you find your space? When you're talking to a retailer, or you're thinking about the consumer, how do you kind of, in such a I guess a mature market with some big players, and you've got that ambition too, how do you find that space?
Look, it's very challenging. It's not for everyone. It's definitely an environment where, back to that comment I made earlier about being comfortable in the uncomfortable, is really, really important. I think firstly, I'll say we're very lucky to have a founder and a visionary that started this business. It's kind of like there is no in our founder's head. It's anything's possible. And I suppose if you have the view that there's bigger players out there and you can only get to a certain level and you'll never be able to play to the same level, you do stay there. You've got to have that vision. And there's many brands that have made that. Red Bull at some stage was in the same position we were. And they were in the same position as we were, in a market where energy wasn't as big as what it is now. And they've built that market. So circle back into that, and you say that they have had a fair run for quite some time now, and the energy market has been heavily dominated. There could be many different reasons. There probably hasn't been the right timing. There hasn't been the right brand, the right product to come in and actually add value to that category. Because when you think about the category and not the players, which is what we're doing and what I'm trying to build and from this business, is it's not about removing other players from the market. It's actually about what does a category story look like? What role do we play within that category? We believe we have a really, really strong position in there, coming from the better energy perspective. Low sugar, no sugar, fully natural ingredients is what the consumers want. So we talk a lot to the retailers about, it's not about taking Red Bull or V or Monster or Mother off the shelves. It's definitely about optimizing their coolers though, and making sure the space is going to the products that could unlock additional revenue to them. Because if I had $1, mate, I'm sure there's lots of people out there, many sales roles that have heard that the shelves aren't elastic and we can't just put another fridge in, or whatever the case may be. It's true. So we've got a little bit of resourcefulness and go, how do we get around that, or how do we work with them? And we're doing a lot of work with major retailers as we speak, a lot actually in the last month and a half, around how do we optimize your coolers to make sure there's space for NPD and growth coming in. But you're always going to have your staples, and your staples in many different areas of whether it's coffee, whether it's milk, whether it's soft drinks. There's always going to be a door or a shelf of brand Coke. There's a market for it. There's a market for Red Bull. There's a market for V. There's definitely a market now for better energy, and the consumers are telling us that with the sales.
Yeah, great. And obviously, you've a long way to go with the business. So I love that ambition, Dan. From a career perspective, you did say that this is kind of the space you're in, the journey you're on is not for everybody. Now, in my experience, a lot of people kind of like the idea of joining a business like Shine. That there's so much excitement with what you're doing. It's palpable when you talk about it. I love it, but it isn't for everybody. Who do you think does thrive in a business like yours, and who doesn't?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think if we could nail that every single time that we're speaking to someone, I think that's a secret sauce, especially as we grow and scale with people within the business. But I think the best way to look at that is there's capability and behaviors. So capability being the skill set that sits behind whatever role that we're hiring for, whether it's a special skill set in finance, or it's a special skill set in category development, or it's supply chain. I mean, there's capability that's required, and I think that's good, but it's the behavior piece that I have focused on a lot in the past, and as a recruitment drive for Steve Chapman, the rest of the business that we've got, is that we heavily focus on values, and we heavily focus on the individual. And because I truly believe you can teach capability, but it's very hard if someone doesn't come in with a certain level of value alignment to the business. That would be a lot harder. And you do see that. So someone who is, we sort of relate to people that come into the business that are very comfortable in the uncomfortable. I think is the best thing about saying that. And that's not because we have an ambition to make people feel uncomfortable. That's because the business is uncomfortable. It's clunky at times. It takes you to do the stuff that people may have had 25 other people to do. There's new line forms, or you send your own postage, or you go pick something up, or even at a CEO level. Steve was flying down to Melbourne for business last week, but we needed something couriered from one side of the state to the other, and he jumped on a regional flight to pick up the sample and take it back because it was going to cost less what it would couriering it. And it's about getting the stock to the right people at the right time. So it's all about just rolling your sleeves up and getting it done when you need to do it. But to wrap that around, I think values and behaviors is something that we employ into the business first and foremost. And then if you've got that, it will make things a little bit easier for you. Or it's a great building block for us. We talk a lot about this concept of win or learn. So you never fail unless you're continuing to make the same mistakes over and over and over. That's a completely different story. It's kind of building and fostering an environment where there's only ever two outcomes. It either works or there's a learning. And genuinely saying that if it doesn't work, there's a reason. Let's understand why. Let's fix it. Let's support what's needed to make sure that it's a win next time. And if you have that philosophy, I mean, it's it's an environment of thriving, not surviving.
Yeah, because you're encouraging people to make decisions, be comfortable with autonomy, because if it doesn't go right, you know what, it could be fixed, and it's not a disaster. You move on and you get better next time. On that value thing, I completely agree with you. And as recruiters, a lot of our job is to understand that kind of how values bring a culture to life, and therefore if we can get an alignment there, the skill set is not that hard really to align. You know, you've either done something, you haven't, you're good at it, you're not, you're on a journey to become better at it, but the value stuff is quite hard. Within Shine, what do you do? How do you assess that? How do you kind of unpick somebody's value set?
I think it's really in the recruitment phase from the start, because that's really where it starts. You need to hire in the right people, not find out post that. So there's a lot of time, very unconventional interview styles, which I had to unchisel the corporate, you know, suit off me, for lack of a better term, for many years. Is we spend a lot more time trying to get to know the candidate rather than the general behavioral questions, and tell us a time when this happened and what would you do, or help us understand if you were given this task, what would be the outcome will you do, and using the whole STAR method and situation, task, action, response. So help us talk us through that. It's more so, what do you do for fun on the weekend, or tell us about what's the hardest thing you've had to admit to yourself. What does candidate X look like when you're stressed, or just those kinds of questions to get under the skin a little bit, to actually understand the person. And then it shows really great, if it's a sales role, it shows really great ability to talk on the fly and to engage and build rapport if you're able to answer those questions quite well. And you sort of find the people who are going to be comfortable in ambiguity up front too, which is really important in this type of business, is ambiguity. And some may say organized, or at times unorganized chaos can be the playing field. So it's quite handy.
Yeah, I'm glad we kind of had this part of the conversation. We touched on it last session with Elise Berryman at Liquify as well, and she talks similarly about left field questions. And on the surface, you kind of think, oh, what does that get? You know, how do you understand somebody with a question like that? But I think to your point there, what it's trying to do is to see, how do you cope with something on the fly that's different, that's not what you expected? How do you react? How do you respond? You know, it's not the substance of what you're saying. It's just how you work it through. Yet so many recruitment processes are stuck in the formula of corporate trained questions and structures and answers, and that's fine. But do you really get inside someone's head around values and cultural fit, which I think is more important with a business like yours? You can get that wrong a little bit in a larger company. You cannot get it wrong in a company like yours when you're kind of going through that growth phase.
And I think it takes it away from just the conversation around remuneration and package. If you're starting to get to know someone, your values aligned, it's important, because it's not all about how much are you paying me, or what's my package, or what's my bonuses look like.
Yeah, exactly. That should be a hygiene factor, really. You know, whenever a candidate gets completely focusing on that, we try very hard to steer them back to the reality of the career path they're on, because the package will take care of itself. It really will. And you know, people who chase package at the wrong time end up earning a lot less over their career than those who actually think through the career journey much more effectively. Dan, we're almost at the end. It goes really quickly, these conversations, but a couple of questions I just wanted to kind of you know, finish off with. What's next for you, and what's next for Shine?
Yeah, I think, let's say Shine first, because they're sort of intertwined. I can see myself at this business for a very long period of time. I don't think there's a date on this business, which is fantastic, and it's very energizing. The Shine business, we're getting very strong in the Australian market. We've just launched in New Zealand. We've sent our first shipping container to Malaysia. We're in discussions with the US, South Korea. So there's international expansion is on the cards, as well as continuing to build with our major retailers here. We launch in Woolworths in 2 different categories next month, which is a fantastic win for the business. And we're launching with major P&C retailers all across the country. So there's massive growth there. For me personally or professionally, I'm extremely enjoying this journey with the team that we have and the people I work with and get to turn up to and work with every day. We have a huddle every morning where we dial in, doesn't matter where we are or what we do. And we talk about what we're grateful for and what our number one task is for the day. And I think there's just amazing things that this business does. Super happy that I made that change, and everything happens for a reason, Mike. I think at times you don't know why or you can't see it, but things definitely happen for you at the right times. And this is definitely one of those roles.
I get that. It comes through in spades. And on a sporting front, is there an event or something else you got in mind? What's next?
I think every time, if you've got the mentality or personality I've got, it can be a little bit on the bad side too when it comes to those kinds of challenges. I think you get to a stage where I started the ultra marathon scene probably 2 years ago, just as the pandemic was starting, and that's another whole world. So there's a few of us, our CEO Steve, and there's a couple other people that we're very close friends with that did our first last man standing sort of 12 to 14 hour event not long ago. And so I think another one of those are on the cards. Once my toenails grow back from the last one, I think one of those is on the cards.
Oh, I feel you. I've done a couple of those in my time, and toenails are the worst.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Dan, that's brilliant. Really enjoyed the conversation today. We got through a fair bit. We'd love to kind of talk with you more. So we'll as I say to quite a few of my guests, not all of them, but say to a few of them, I'd love to do a part 2. So we'll maybe come back and do a part 2 at some point. But guys, for those in the live session, we're going to take a break from the live sessions. That we're back on August the 4th when we go again. We've got a really strong lineup of leaders to take us through to Christmas. We've got Keith Shortall, who's the MD of J&J Asia Pac. Then Amanda Schmidhofer, Chief Consumer Officer at Mrs. Max, James Farrell, Sales Director of Upfield, Kurt Hegfold, MD of Electrolux, Donna Mulholland of JDE, and so on and so on. There's lots more to come. We've even got John McLaughlin in, who's the CEO of the Advantage Group, which will be a must listen to for anyone in FMCG. We'll try and get some inside tips on how to improve your tag scores. Now, we're going to use this break also, the live sessions, to bring you some awesome new content on the podcast. So we're going to have some sessions on the secrets and tips and strategies from the XR sales and marketing recruitment team, covering things such as how to get yourself into fit, how to evaluate a job offer. So some really interesting kind of bonus pods coming your way too. And finally, if you've not got your salary guide for sales, marketing, or category, or you're not on the mailing list for the Sales and Marketing Collective, the bi-monthly newsletter we're producing on the movers and shakers and sales and marketing, reach out to the XR team. We'll get those to you as well. So Dan, thanks again. That was awesome.
No, thank you. Right, it's I love the show. I've been watching it for quite a while, and you get great guests. I'm not talking about self-included there, but you have great guests, and mate, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, the show's as good as the guests we get on, and I think every conversation just adds value, I hope, to people's thinking about a career and how they get the most out of it. So I think today's been another great step in the right direction. So thanks, Dan. So see you all back in the Sales Marketing Director Incubator August the 4th. From the UK, good night. For those of you in Australia, have a great day.